So on that note, Jill has our program today. Jill.
Okay. Well, it is a huge honor for me to introduce our speaker today. It is Roger Ackerman, my uncle. He's married to my mother's sister. And Roger was born and raised in North Carolina. He's a University of North Carolina honor graduate. His wife is Deanie. He has 3 children, 3 grandchildren. He served 2 years on active duty as an officer in the U.S. Air Force. He lived in Sumter, South Carolina for 47 years. He retired from business in 1996. He was in the scrap business. And in Rotary, he celebrated 45 years of being a Rotarian last November. He was president of his Sumter Rotary Club, 1978 to 79. He was a Paul Harris Fellow, a major donor to the foundation, charter member of Paul Harris Society, Sumter Rotarian of the Year in 1982, Rotary Distinguished Service Award for the district, District 7770 in 1998. 1982 and 2000 was named District Rotarian of the Year. 2006, he was the recipient of the Rotary International Service Above Self Award, Rotary International's highest honor for individual Rotarians. He's a C.A.R.T founder, which is the program he's going to talk about today, Coins for Alzheimer's Research Trust, and secretary. And in 2008, he's the recipient of the Order of the Palmetto, South Carolina's highest civilian award. So it's my honor, and probably the reason I'm in Rotary today, my Uncle Roger.
Thank you very much. I am so delighted to be here in Twin Falls and at the Twin Falls Rotary Club. I'd heard a great deal about your accomplishments, but yesterday Jill gave us the 50-cent tour, and everywhere we seemed to go, it was something about what you guys had done for your community. I may get the names wrong, but you acquired the land for, I think, Centennial Park. Then we went to the college and we saw the walkway or path that you're sponsoring, and then we were at the downtown park where you had your ice cream social, and then we saw what will eventually be the splash pond, and then I hear about all the charities you support. So you are certainly living up to Rotary's motto of service above self, and you're to be congratulated. I would like to share with you today a project that started in my club in late 1995 in an attempt to see if eventually we could raise significant funds to support cutting-edge research in hopes of finding a prevention and cure for Alzheimer's disease. I thought you'd like to hear a little bit about how it got started, because it is the only project that I know of that started in a single club and now encompasses multiple Rotary districts and multiple states. As you know, most times these type projects come down from Rotary International, such as our polio eradication project of 1985. In making my comments, there will be some personal reference, but I assure you that no one knows better than I do that you can have an idea, but it's your fellow Rotarians that make it happen. As someone said many years ago, there is no I in Rotary. The C.A.R.T Fund, Coins for Alzheimer's Research Trust, came about due to a personal tragedy in our family. Jill's wonderful grandmother, Deanie and Lynn's mom, my second mother, at age 71 was one of the most active women of her generation you'd ever want to meet. But then we started noticing memory loss, which ultimately was the start of Alzheimer's disease. And hers was a long, long, long goodbye lasting 18 years, the last 4 of which she knew none of us. To say it was heartbreaking is an understatement. During this time, around the mid-1980s, there was no internet. and the only information we could get were the symptoms of the disease and advice to caregivers. I kept thinking, why is there nothing about research? And I was hoping that perhaps maybe we Rotarians could provide some significant funds. But how to do it? I knew it had to be simple, easy to do, could not interfere with long-standing projects that we Rotarians do in our respective communities, and certainly could not detract from the Rotary Foundation. Finally, in the spring of 1995, I was having lunch with a friend, nothing to do with this project, and he mentioned that he had just read that every day in our country, $8 to $9 billion in coins exchanges hands. I took it as information, but the next morning at 3 a.m., I came out of bed like a joke, and I thought, why couldn't we Rotarians voluntarily empty our pockets of change when we come into a meeting? That morning, I called our president and president-elect and asked if they would join me that afternoon for a meeting. I told them my idea. They liked it. We took it to our board of directors, and they voted unanimously to make a trial program starting in late 1995. And in 7 months, we raised $4,200. In the meantime, in May of '96, a friend of mine was co-chairing the district conference at Hilton Head Island and arranged for me to have 10 minutes to introduce C.A.R.T to our district. Shortly after I spoke, there was a scheduled 10-minute recess, and quite a few of the president-elects came up to congratulate me on the idea, and it was sort of encouraging. And as soon as we reassembled, though, I got a message that the district governor-elect wanted to see me outside of the room. And when I got out there, he said, "Roger, I want you to know that I will not support," as he called it, "your project. But if you want to go get your own committee and go out in our district and convince the clubs to support it, that's okay with me." Well, he knew, as I did, that when you have a new project in a district and don't have the support of your district governor, it's like the kiss of death. But when I returned home, I recruited 2 fellow Rotarians who had just retired, both of whom had wonderful experience speaking to groups, and they agreed to join me. Our big problem was convincing clubs to give us a full program. But we did speak to 62 of the 68 clubs in our district that year, and all of us had the same experience. After the meeting was adjourned, Rotarians were coming up and putting change in front of us, dollar bills, checks, and that was very encouraging, but we did run into some roadblocks. There were so many Rotarians that just didn't think a project like this could ever really get anywhere. However, within 2.5 years of the time that I spoke in Hilton Head, we had over $100,000. And my district officers and past district governors were putting a lot of pressure on me to get this money working. But I thought, $100,000 for research? I mean, that's nothing. Nevertheless, one of my recruits and I called up to the National Institute of Health in Washington and spoke to Dr. Jim Snyder. Told him what we were trying to do. He just couldn't get over that a group was voluntarily starting a project to support Alzheimer's disease research, and he was very encouraging and provided us a list of the top 32 high-end research centers in the country. Our committee decided to invite the 7 on the East Coast. We invited Harvard, Pennsylvania, Johns Hopkins, Duke, Emory, Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, and the University of Alabama, Birmingham, plus our own Medical University of South Carolina. We had no idea if we'd even get 1 application, but 7 of the 8 applied, and the one that did in Alabama wrote a letter of apology that they had missed a deadline as they were involved in hiring a new director. We knew we were onto something. In the meantime, Dr. Snyder had helped us contact a group in New York, the American Federation for Aging Research, who agreed to help us recruit some Alzheimer's scientists to review these applications. One was from California, one was Pennsylvania, and one was from New York. And they said that we should give the grant to Dr. Alan Levy at Emory University, one of the top research hospitals in the East, located in Atlanta. And at our 1999 district conference, Dr. Levy was there to receive a $100,000 check. And I tell you, it was a magical evening. And with that grant, it then became my responsibility to go out and recruit the other district in South Carolina, the 3 districts in Georgia, and the 6 districts in North Carolina. Now, I want to tell you that I've met no district governor who wants a new project. They just want to accomplish whatever goals Rotary International sets out for them. But I visited each of these districts, met with their district leaders, and by July 2000, just 14 months after we'd made the grant to Dr. Levy, all had agreed to come on board and join in the C.A.R.T effort. We met, organized, elected officers, and drafted bylaws, the most important of which I think was that 100% of every dollar contributed had to go to Alzheimer's research, and that is still the case. So where are we today? Well, in 2012, we had funds for 2 major grants, and we had 81 applicants from all over the country. That is totally unheard of. 25 would have been a big number. We have never averaged, well, let's say we've averaged over 50 with all our grants that we give every year. This year, for the first time, 2 women scientists got our grants, one from Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in LA and the other from the University of Washington in Seattle. And both were at our annual Board of Directors meeting in Columbia, South Carolina in May to tell us more about their research. We've been very, very fortunate to have, for the last 6 years, 3 world-renowned scientists that give freely of their time, as busy as they are, to take those 81 applicants, narrow it down to no more than 15. Then those 15 are invited to give much more detail on their research, and then we narrow it down to 3. And in the meantime, we've added to the districts I've already mentioned. Last year, a district in Tennessee, and just this July 1st, a district in Virginia with 83 clubs came on board. And we have a lot of individual clubs in Kentucky and Texas and Florida that also send us funds. We've now made 20 grants totaling just under $4 million. I'd like to share with you one of our grants that you probably may have heard about, but didn't associate it with the C.A.R.T fund. Back in the spring, we, on national TV and on all the major newspapers like Wall Street Journal and New York Times, headlines read, "Cancer drug may cure Alzheimer's." My wife Dean and I recognized that immediately as being a grant we'd made in 2011 to Dr. Gary Landreth of Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. You folks may never have heard of Case Western. They don't have a football team. But it is one of the top research centers in the country. In fact, Harvard sends their med students there for 2 semesters of study. And Dr. Landreth is the first scientist to receive 2 C.A.R.T grants. Institutions such as Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville and Penn have received multiple grants, but he's the first scientist. Back in 2001, he got our second grant, an amount of $250,000. And he would tell you that C.A.R.T was his last hope. He had spoken to every foundation he knew about and the Alzheimer's Association, and no one would back him. With our $250,000 in a year and a half, he had proven his research to the point that he went to the National Institute of Health and he was given around $1.8 million to continue his research, which he did over the next 8 years, got FDA approval, patented his findings, and just about 19 months ago made a deal with GlaxoSmithKline, a pharmaceutical, to take over the research with the understanding that they would spend no less than $220 million to continue his research. So a $250,000 grant from C.A.R.T has been parlayed into a minimum of $222 million. Now to tell you about the current research that's going on. First, let me give you a little background. All of us humans have a protein in our brain called amyloid. Some have more than others. Over the years, this amyloid will cluster and cover the brain. And it is then called beta amyloid plaque by the scientists and has been the focus of 95% of all research in Alzheimer's disease. Yet we still don't have a cure or prevention. About 4 or 5 years ago, scientists started looking at some of the evidence and found that when they did autopsies on humans that had no sign of dementia but had the beta amyloid plaque, just as those who had Alzheimer's. So they started thinking something must be triggering this. One of the first to recognize that was Dr. Sanjay Pimplekar of the famous Cleveland Clinic. It was his idea that another protein in the brain called tau, T-A-U, that characteristically gives off tangles, and that these tangles connect with the beta amyloid plaque to trigger Alzheimer's. He got a C.A.R.T grant, and in his laboratory, using genetically engineered mice, he was able to prove to his satisfaction that this was the case, and has published 3 major papers in medical journals, and has stimulated a lot of thought along the same avenue. In fact, Dr. Kurt Bruden of Pennsylvania got a grant from C.A.R.T, and he is trying to develop a chemical drug that will prevent the tau from giving off the tangles. Okay, with that in mind, I'll tell you about Gary's current research. One of his young colleagues was testing using a cancer drug that is used on a limited basis for skin cancer called Bexatrine with a genetically engineered mouse that had the beta amyloid plaque. And to her amazement, in 24 hours, the plaque started to dissolve. And in 48 hours, 2/3 of it was gone. Of course, Gary and his other colleagues got very excited, tested all the other mice, and got the same results. Now, because he used a drug that is FDA approved, he doesn't have to wait 8, 9, 10 years to start testing humans with Alzheimer's. The first thing he had to do was determine the amount of the solution. And I got an email from him about 6 weeks ago saying they are going with about 20% strength. And in August, just a few weeks, they hope to test their first Alzheimer's patient. Now, my friends, if what happened in those mice happened in humans, we may have one of the major breakthroughs of the past 100 years, medically speaking. If the beta amyloid, if the beta amyloid dissolves into humans, does it stop the progression of the disease? Does it reverse some of the memory loss and the behavior that's associated with Alzheimer's patients? I personally have spoken to a number of scientists who absolutely believe that will happen, especially for those in early Alzheimer's. Does the amyloid that has been dissolved come back slowly, quickly? Not at all. And finally, if there is no beta amyloid plaque, would that make the tau tangles ineffective? This has got the scientific community quite excited, and I think you, by your applause, understand why. My friends, we are facing a catastrophic situation in the industrialized world. Every 69 seconds in our country, someone new is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And they can only say that it's going to get worse unless we find a prevention or cure. For the first time ever, in a survey done in our country, Alzheimer's topped cancer as the #1 disease that we dread. That's amazing. You know, when we talk about this, we're not talking about people 2,000 to 3,000 miles away that we will never meet. We're talking about us. We're talking about you and me. We're talking about our families. We're talking about our friends, our neighbors, the people in our community. We're talking about us. We cannot fail in this effort. My time is about up because President Dave has another thing he wants to take care of, but I will tell you that I will be around as long as you'd like to answer any questions you have. I brought some brochures about C.A.R.T, and we have a website. I would love to see this outstanding club consider starting the C.A.R.T fund here with your pocket change, and perhaps being the pioneers for spreading it throughout Idaho. That would be wonderful, but regardless of that, I want to thank you for having Deanie and I here today. It's been a real honor and a pleasure for us to be here, and thank you so much for having us.
Sure, I will do that, yes. Thank you, Roger. That was quite a journey that he's been on so far. He's got a tremendous resume, and to make a commitment to such a program for so many years and to see it come to such great success is really kind of heartwarming. I just personally learned yesterday that my mother-in-law has the early signs of Alzheimer's, and it's been quite a journey to get to that point. So thank you very much for your timeliness of making your presentation today. We would like to present you with a small gift.
Thank you.
And this is some people call it a flash drive, some people call it a jump drive. But you can keep it on your wrist if you want to, for the convenience to remember where that backup hard drive is if you need it to work on your computer. I know I've got mine in my pocket, so you never know when you might need to back up your hard drive. In any event, we also have a extra special presentation to be made today, and it's actually a twofold reason why Roger's here today, to the surprise of his niece. If Mrs. Roger would come up and join us for the presentation. Mrs. Ackerman.
You can see why I married into this family. Dean, come over. Jill, if you'll stand up.
What are you guys doing?
Jill, your Aunt Dean and I have, well, you've just been a joy to us from the time you were a little girl. And it's been such a thrill for us to watch you grow up. You're such a sensitive, loving, kind, caring, competent woman, and we're so proud of you. And to show our admiration and love, we have decided to make you a second Paul Harris Fellow, which is signified by the pen and a stone. And I'm going to ask your Aunt Deanie to pin this on you, if I can get it out of the...
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I did. Okay.
Oh, Uncle Russ. Thank you.
And I noticed that none of you died from eating chocolate.
We had one close call. Well, thank you. Thank you. you.